Welcome to Feature Duel or Feature Fight or Feature Feud or whatever we're going to call it. Uh, well, let's dive into this. Hey Vince, are you on, by the way? I see you. I always like to say
Yeah,
hey to
I'm
everyone
here.
else.
It's very late where I am, so
Yeah,
uh,
where are you? Are
in
you in Germany?
Dresden, Germany.
Yep. Well, yeah, I think it's 4:30 for you.
2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, 3:30 for me. Yeah. You and I are the committed ones. The server is in Frankfurt, so you might have the fastest ping time.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right, let's get going.
Let's see if you do. All right, so let's see. So the way this works is um, as we have each topic pop up, either people, basically anybody who wants to pick a side can make a short argument for that thing. The first one looks like it's going to be a slam dunk. And that basically is, do you develop with a file locally on your computer so that it's fast? Um, or do you develop with with a file hosted on the server? Does anybody want to go to bat for developing with a local file?
Is there some use case other than performance that would mean a local file be valuable?
Yeah, you could do it on a plane.
Love that. So,
You could do it if internet goes down. There's no risk uh, of being disconnected, but of course, there's the significant risk of on the other side, if your computer crashes, the local file can be damaged, and if your computer crashes, it's highly unlikely that the hosted file will crash. I don't know if there's much more to it than that. Anybody else?
I'll defend local on the local area network, but hosted.
Yeah, I don't actually like that method either, but that's not what this question is. I I'm a huge advocate myself of having it be on a cloud server, similar to what your client would have, so that it makes you a better developer because you can't be lazy. You have to make sure things are fast. And also, you should develop with a large data set, 10,000 records, not 5 records.
So you're already beginning the argument then.
Oh, this particular one, I kind of have I do have my mind kind of made up on this one. So I'm going to even go ahead and vote. It's 24-0.
No way.
28-0.
24. I mean,
Um,
I will chime in and say that in a long time ago, maybe there was all kinds of things saying that you shouldn't develop um, like on a hosted development server, but I haven't heard much about that discussion lately, and it's been very, very stable for a long time now. The other benefit is that you can develop with multiple people, if you develop on a local file.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see, where are lightning? 20.
This one is really slam on 24-0.
Okay, so second one, themes. Sometimes, themes, always. So basically, this is when you have a database, do you rigorously always put themes on there or styles in one theme for every single object? Um, or do you like either ignore them or only use them sometimes?
So is this question, should you or do you?
Do you? Well, actually, really, kind of all of these ones are not necessarily should you versus do you, but which one would you argue for? But I'm also really curious if people have, if they say one thing and do another.
I'm not seeing the second
Do I
question.
see? Yeah. So what do you think?
You have to refresh if you're not seeing the second item. I have the same problem.
For right-hand corner.
Who has an argument um, for using themes and styles rigorously in a solution. Why you would do it, for example.
WebDirect.
Yes.
That's really the number one reason in my book.
Really? Make that much of a
Consistency.
big difference?
Huge difference. Makes a
Really?
difference of usability and not usability in a
Performance,
complex layout.
Consistent UI.
It's not even that. It's a performance thing, like because it can just reuse the whole theme. But if it's doing all these local styles, it really bogs things down.
I've heard tell that FileMaker Go makes a big difference with it too, but I haven't seen it. I haven't really tested it much myself.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't really tested that either.
I would actually, for me, the biggest benefit to having everything be rigorous is it makes you consistent. You don't get to have, oh, I want this one thing to be two point sizes bigger, or this other font exception or whatever. It sort of forces you to use less things, and I think that makes you a better developer. Fewer fonts and styles and colors makes a better database. That's my defense of themes always.
I would say themes always. Not everything that we have on a layout has styles. We usually go for the low-hanging fruit, like the fields, of which there's a lot, and the labels, of which there's a lot. But if
Yeah.
we miss a few objects on the layout, it's like, that's all right, we got most of them. Nice to have like badges that show you, or some sort of heat map that shows you what objects haven't yet been styled.
It would be a really good feature, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
guess you can-
that's 2 votes for against, no votes against that feature.
Another one that's just not a very good fight, huh? Wow.
I would add a comment to that, in that I wonder if, if you're a developer, consultant, whatever, doing work for a client, budget constraints where you just don't have the time because it's a nice to have, but we really don't have the budget for it. So versus an in-house developer where, wow, what am I going to do today? I don't know. Maybe I'll make sure all my styles are styled, all my objects are styled. You know what I mean? I wonder if there's like a weighted distribution for and against. Anyway.
Well, I don't use styles at all until I get to R1 stable. When I have a release 1 stable, then I'll go back and fix all the styles. But usually it's time to value is more important than working out all the styles up front.
Rick, are you in-house or are you a consultant?
Kirk?
Lost your
Say
audio.
it again, Vince, I didn't hear you.
I said, are you an in-house developer or are you a consultant?
No, because I'm a contractor.
Oh, okay.
I've got a number of clients I work with, but usually it's get something out there so they can start using it. And once it gets to a point of being stable, then they're going to be asking for more features. And while they're doing that, I can be fixing all the styles.
So I missed, what was the argument for just sometimes and not always using a theme?
Time, which equals money.
But I mean, wouldn't you just like pick a theme anyway? I mean, you're kind of given a theme when you first make a layout anyhow, right?
I think the topic's broader than just themes, though, right? It's just everything to do with themes, all those styles and everything.
There's also the built-in themes, or the themes that are provided elsewhere versus the custom. We have a custom theme, which is based on the history of having a particular font size, or rather field size. So when the themes came from FileMaker, they were all like 23. The fields were 23 high, and we had layouts that went way back, back to FileMaker 3. So we did a custom theme where the fields are 15 points high, or I mean, yeah, there's a lot of aspects to this whole theme and style.
That's the name styles very explicitly so that it isn't like heading, footing. It's more like 12-point bold blue with a clear background. Because I'm not necessarily going to use it for just a heading. I'm going to use it for a number of places. I need the characteristics of it, not the name. That's one of the reasons I don't end up with them up front until I get things on paper or in the software running. I'm not sure what the overall look's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Another topic for the future, we have like a standard look, and then about half of the projects, the customer is very
You
visual.
should vote for what you should do, so my vote's over on the themes always,
Yeah.
even if I don't pay attention to it.
What were you saying, Johnny?
I was going to say one of the things that comes up a lot. We have a custom theme that we use a lot by default. Like if the customer doesn't have an opinion, about half of the projects, or maybe like 1 out of 3 projects, the customer is like super visual. They're architects. They're going to be, and then it's actually kind of challenging because you have to kind of develop a whole nother theme,
Cover
which
that topic.
takes time.
Got a question. What about the buying the themes that Matt Petrowski or some of them have you guys found them to be useful?
Matt actually designed what do I call it? Well, my brain is not firing.
Apex Blue.
Apex Blue. The linear blue popped in my head, but that's not the same thing. That's
Company.
yes. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Apex Blue. But I don't use it as is. I make a derivative of it. It's really the only theme you should use to start a new theme because it's got many modern things that are the spacing and a lot of other things are there just so much better in my opinion.
So do you
That's a whole different topic.
so when you modify your theme, do you keep reusing that modified theme, or do you create a new one for each project?
Yeah, that'd be a really good question. I have a new one for each project, but I frequently start with one from another project and then just switch up the colors. I have a few different ones. I don't know. I've been using one now that's all the default fonts are Avenir 15 point, just because I like it. Because like 16 is a little too big, 14 is definitely a little too small, so right in the middle. And then
Avenir. Is that cross
don't even
platform?
talk about naming conventions. What was that?
Is that Avenir? Is that cross platform?
I hope so. I didn't actually look at that. But I thought it was a cross-platform one. It's for my internal databases, I think.
Oh.
I don't think Avenir's on the list of web-safe fonts.
Hey, we're never going to get through this duel if we don't move on.
All right.
Good point.
What's-
Okay, the next one is validation. So FileMaker has the feature of being able to validate at the field level. It goes back to really old versions. So, for example, ensuring that a field has is not empty, or has no duplicate value, or has a value that's a member of a value list, et cetera, et cetera. Versus not using that feature at all because basically because dialog boxes, right? So like if you fail validation when the user's using it, they're going to see a modal dialog that may or may not make a lot of sense to the user. And their only choices are going to be, well, you can warn them or you can let them keep the value in, but you don't have any other control of what the user sees. So flexibility on one side, basic default FileMaker feature on the other side. What are the arguments for and against these two ways? Cast and vote. You should not be here. Thoughts? Who uses validation at the schema level?
Just use it at the schema level.
Except for unique, that's the only thing I use it for.
Shouldn't use it for unique either. Whoop! I just revealed my opinion.
Imagine the game show host.
I'm not a very good game show host. I'm too opinionated.
Well, the only thing is UUIDs, but by default, they're supposed to be unique, right? So why bother?
Yeah. Okay. I don't still understand that. I don't know how well I'm going to put up an argument here, but I mean, if something you want to always be the same, no matter how anybody gets to it, whether they're coming in with a like ODBC or
Right.
some other layout that you didn't plan on,
Yep.
then I mean, I would want to, as often as possible, have it at the schema level.
Okay.
I might do something
definitely see that
different or
argument.
extra but if anything's like really important, it's just like my security, right? I wouldn't want to make it my own security. I'd want it like as far back as I can get it so that anything coming at it would be protected.
Yeah. I would think yeah. Who else feels the same way?
Where's Vince?
Yep.
You do, Vince?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he's half asleep.
Wake up, Vince.
Vince, we didn't
I'm
hear
here.
what you
I'm
said.
here.
What do you
Sorry. I said I also feel the same way, but I said that I do both. I'll validate it at the script level because again, oftentimes what we do is we'll be doing stuff, kind of letting the user edit the data in a local copy, like in a card window, and we do the validation there, and we do the validation on the schema. So when it goes to the server, even if something maybe didn't get caught when the user was filling it out, it'll get caught at the schema level.
Right.
Oh, so has to make two passes in to get in, huh?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, it's interesting to see how much, I don't know, bogus data or invalid data there is, and there are tools to clean up the data before you even do like visualizations, like for example, Tableau Prep is a tool that Tableau sells, or actually Salesforce sells, and it's fascinating to me that it's even there for purposes of cleaning and scrubbing and well, I wouldn't even say just for that purpose, but for many other purposes it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's interesting to see that we don't use the full power of FileMaker sometimes.
Yeah. The only argument that I would make on this one is this. FileMaker by default, for example, on the creation timestamp field, makes it a required value. This means if you import a record and you, for whatever reason, don't have that box, don't import that value. So now you have a record that's created that's valid in every way, except it doesn't have a creation timestamp. If the checkbox is checked to not allow that, the user cannot change anything. The record is dead. And who cares if it has a timestamp? But that means the user cannot change data. That's a gigantic flaw, in my opinion, and gets in the way of it. Makes the users hate the database when they see something like that makes no sense, that they can't get around. Which is why one of my soapboxes is that there's errors on every single one of the 5 default settings for all the 5 created fields that FileMaker has.
Did you say creation timestamp?
Yeah.
Well, I've never encountered a problem with.
Oh, they require like not empty. Is that one of the conditions?
Yep.
Oh, well, I know. Okay, well, I'll say I've never checked that box where it's required, but it's always there anyway because
Unless you import a record.
No, even when I import records, I get them.
If you import a record and check, and you're importing it from a spreadsheet or whatever that has values in some and not in others, or you uncheck the box to automatically set it, there's valid reasons why imported data will miss things. If it's missing something like a primary key, that's obviously a problem. That maybe you should stop cold on that one. Anyway, that's kind of my argument on that one. All right.
Validation level, just to jump in. I have a iPad client sending the data to a FileMaker server via a data API script because it's an offline system that sends the data back. If and being down under, we are DDMMYY. If the user has switched their date system on their iPad, they don't get any visual indication that their dates are around the wrong way. But when the file is sent to the server to create a record through the data API, there is no error returned from the data API to say that the date is in the wrong format, unless you run it through the script debugger, and it will then tell you there's a date format. There is a inconsistent data. It doesn't tell you it's an issue to do with dates. The record does not get created, and there's no real acknowledgement back to the user to say this is the error that you've got.
Yeah, yikes. So like if you put in a date that's March 17th or something, there is no month 17 kind of a thing.
So that would then be a strong case for doing it in your script, that you're not validating at the field level, and that I'm going to say best practices tells us to import into a temp table first rather than the live table, then process the record via scripts. And depending on whether the data is coming in from the data API, you may be bringing things in as a text string anyway, rather than a date format, because you're bringing JSON in or whatever format you're bringing it through. So that's probably a vote for doing it within the script rather than the schema itself.
All right. I think our arguments are made on that one, for and against. Vote. Any other comments on that one before we go on to?
So let me closing comment. We were looking at this the other day, and there's a lot to this whole validate thing. We were looking at the 4 choices at the top of the dialogue and playing around, thinking, riffing a little bit off what Matt said. It's choices that let you modify data with a script. And as to Darren's point, I was doing some testing with set field, indirection, whatever, and the choices you make at the little top, always or sometimes, I don't have it in front of me, seem to have, well, not just seem, but tested as having different errors returned. So the whole validation, there's a lot there. It would be probably a full presentation in and of itself, and then tied into auto enters, and you'd have a whole meeting.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Yeah. All right.
Hearing, Tony?
One day.
Okay. Sorry.
I guess my opinions are showing, because like in the classes I teach to never use any of those features at all because they all have downsides in the user experience. Never an auto enter, never basically nothing at the schema level, because it shows weird dialog boxes to the user. They're all leftover features from old versions of FileMaker. None of them have gotten any love in the last 15 years. Anyway, okay, next one. The graph. What is the primary purpose of the relationship graph? A, about maintaining relationships and, I guess the obvious name. Or B, layout design. So this isn't like, obviously both things are true. My question is, what is the primary purpose? So you get to vote. If you think that it's both equally, then you could put a vote in the middle. If you think it's really mainly for one or mainly the other, you can put that in. Arguments for each side? silence. People are
I
voting.
feel like I'd like to vote for the graph, but in reality, you just come up against all those damn layouts all the time. I don't, it's just,
You mean voting for the relationship integrity part, not the
Yeah.
layout design part?
yeah.
I
But
guess
then-
also this, I think this also assumes that you use table occurrence groups, right? And with rigorous naming conventions. That would be another interesting question, but wow, so the votes are pretty strong on this one. That the primary purpose is actually relational integrity and not layout design.
Is anyone going to make the other argument?
Oh yeah, I would definitely make the other argument. You don't necessarily even need the graph you don't even need to necessarily have your relationships at the graph level. You can have them be in SQL. You could have things be disconnected. But to me, working with a portal and knowing exactly what the distance and path to a given field is, the point of the graph is to make your database simple so that you don't have to go to the graph when you're doing layout development. That's my argument. That's its primary function. Its secondary function, which is also important, is to actually have referential integrity. But if you use table occurrence groups, there's a ton of duplication, so it's kind of, that's really not its primary thing. If you have a data file and an interface file, the data file can have a perfect ERD. Anyway, that was kind of the reason I put this one in here, because I wanted to see if other people had thought about that or if they cared about it.
Matt, you mentioned portals on the choice on the right-hand side. Portals, so that's for layout design. I think that fits. We went through a little bit of a stage where I had structure on the relationship graph that I removed and moved to scripting because I was wanting to lighten the relationship graph. And I said, look, if I needed, I had stuff like, oh, I'm going to use a relationship structure to do a find. But I can do the same functionality on the scripting level. So my graphs are lighter weight than they used to be.
Yeah, mine are too. Yeah, as I evolve as a developer, I'm using my methods are definitely changing. Few to no calculated fields, lighter graphs. Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, all of us are probably moving in whatever direction as we go through as we mature, let's just say, as developers. Okay. Any other discussion on that one? It looks like people are voting. Ooh, next question. Recursion. When writing code that is recursive, where is the best place to put the recursion code? So a function like a while or a custom function, or in a script layer. Arguments for and against.
But I'm sure I even really believe this, but maybe the scripts are easier to debug,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Yeah.
That's
So,
the case. Yeah.
totally agree. And
Yeah.
Why
I
wouldn't
guess
you believe that?
it would be also easier, along what you're saying, Alexi, before we had while. If we didn't have while, I would say for sure slam dunk scripting, because oh my god, debugging
Yeah.
custom function without while was just a mess.
Yeah, interesting. So, like while you like much better than custom functions for recursion?
Well, just from debugging them,
Mhm.
yeah,
Because you can't really
sure.
debug a while. I mean, a while is just as hard to debug as a custom function. Right.
Yeah, but I think it encapsulates it a little bit easier, and you have more flexibility. Although I never write them.
Yeah.
I just seen what other people have done and our team, and I've seen the approaches they've taken before we had While, and how While has expanded the territory of possibilities and flexibility.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
Not just in a custom function, but in calculations in general too.
Yeah, that's true. Is there anything that while or custom functions can do in recursion that you cannot do in a script that doesn't use either of those? I couldn't think of anything, and I would love if someone could tell me something.
You could use while in a calculation. I'd like the script functions where you pass something in and you have the script. You can pass it from any file, and get exit script result, whatever.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
some things you just need a calc. You need them to work in the calc without having to make places from which you cannot call a script. And then I suppose if you have a custom function, you get these nice terse names for the code.
Whiles run really fast.
Yep. Speed was the thing that I thought was going to be a big part of the argument, right? Because while and custom function are definitely both faster than the script layer. And so if you've got something that has to go through thousands of iterations, that's definitely a different. Is while faster than custom functions? I haven't actually benchmarked those.
I don't know.
I think there might be academic differences. All right. Any
Pretty
other
close.
arguments for and against?
Well, I think
Pretty
the
close,
other
yeah.
thing too is with the while loop. I think that there are methods you can use to help debug. Like dropping stuff from the global fields or whatever, so you can go
Mhm.
along and check things as they're going.
Okay. I'm going to cast my vote on that one. And I see a bunch of bouncing things in the chat.
Wow, so you you tilted towards script, huh?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I would think scripts, the only place I do recursion is scripts myself.
I don't know if that's fair, right? Because you put while. While's not really recursion. It's just like any
While
other.
is recursion.
Mm,
You don't think so? I guess it
No.
can't technically call itself.
no.
Yeah, while's the definition of a recursion.
Because even it's just like a loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah,
That's
loop.
what I think.
I think it's a loop. Recursion, custom functions with recursion have give you the feature of being able to internally loop. So it's probably just semantics.
Yeah.
You can pass it to the web viewer and do JSON on it or JavaScript on it.
I see Matt disappeared his video. Is he still with us? Hey, hello, Matt.
Maybe you're muted. I don't know.
Reese forgot to pay its bill again.
Mutiny.
He's still showing up in the participants, but
Yeah, it doesn't know that he's gone.
he's a zombie.
I'll send him a chat.
Hope he's not talking.
Is he showing up as unmuted? Yeah. Yep.
In Europe, right? In like
Greece.
Greece.
Crete, exactly.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, mind you, he was traveling. I don't remember, like with the choir. I don't know. So I'm not sure if he's back in Greece. I think he is.
Back. Yeah, somebody's coming.
Hey, I'm back, I think.
Yeah, you are.
Come back.
Sorry
There you
about that.
Welcome back, Matt. Did you add the next item to vote for?
I think we lost him again.
Oh. Well, first thing he needs to do is add that next item to vote for. We can discuss.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about custom functions, there was also the discussion of like tail recursion, and what was the other one? Head recursion, or I don't know the differences between the two, but tail and
It's regular and tail. And
it's like how it adds to the stack, right?
Right.
Or something like that, right?
Changes the limit of number of recursions you can do.
Yeah.
then was 10,000.
And
Another
with
one was either
while,
40 or 50,000.
but
Not
with
even on the
while,
test, I can't remember.
yeah.
Then required a variable.
But with while, those things are kind of blown out of the water, right? Because you
Yes.
can set
Thank you.
you can set the limits to how often, how much recursion you want to have happen.
Well, that's why it's not
So,
recursion, because you're not limited.
He's not giving it up.
yeah, he's not giving up on that either. Anyway,
This is an example of a recursive conversation.
yeah.
Very
That-
clever,
that-
Tony.
Talking about
Yeah.
a talk, that would be a great talk as well.
Oh, so speaking of great talks,
Yeah.
I was doing something. Is Matt back? I heard it.
There
Yeah,
you
there's
are.
Hey,
Matt.
Matt.
All right,
First,
Matt,
Okay,
we
sorry
need
about
to-
that.
What's our
first
next
thing you
topic?
got to do is add the next topic so we can talk about it if you get cut out again.
All right. All right. Sorry about that. And I may lose it again, so I'll set those up right now. Because actually, now we're at lightning round.
We were able to keep busy. We just talked about you while you were gone.
That's good. I'm glad. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Is my camera up?
Yeah, we see.
Starlink outages. So it was down for like a good couple minutes there.
You've got Starlink. That's very cool.
Yeah, where I live, it's not in village. It's like not in the city, I mean. Like it's a 20-minute away. The Mediterranean is right down that hill. And the internet speed here is DSL.
And what does Starlink get you there?
200 megabit, give or take. And pretty good reliability, except for that time.
Oh yeah.
Usually it goes down. It goes down for like a second or two, several times a day, while it switches from one satellite to the next. Okay, lightning round. 4 quick ones. FileMaker Pro 19.1234567 or 6 or FileMaker Pro 2023. Quick votes on that one.
I think 19.1 and 2 should be out of that equation. There's too many
Okay.
problems with it. 19.3 or better.
Okay. But then if you're 19.3, then you're not compatibility with 2023. But yeah, this is a quick one. I think actually maybe what we could say here is, what are you using? Since this server is running server 2023, I know everyone is at least using 19.4 here. But I would say, what is your server running right now? 19 or 2023?
Oh, what is it running?
My server or your server?
That's what you're asking in the lightning round?
I'm asking what you guys use in your server.
Oh, it's like what we want to use or what we...
What you do, actually, either way.
Okay.
Really, what you want to use, I think. Actually, that's probably a better question. What do you want to use? What do you wish your IT department wasn't stupid about? And then the second quick one, engage next February or pause on air this October. And of course, there's a lot of other conferences too. The third one is a naming convention question. And that is, how do you name things? Do you use Oh, do you really? This is about capitalization when you use table occurrence groups. Do you capitalize the base table or do you capitalize the current table?
I don't
So
capitalize anything.
if you don't capitalize
Yeah.
anything, then you don't get to play.
Eric, wait a minute. Eric, was that you? You don't capitalize anything?
No,
Yeah.
well, I'll do camel case, but I don't do it in all caps.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I capitalize everything.
My base
The whole
table
entire
always
thing is
all
caps?
Every place.
Well, I'll have to say that one of the reasons is because we import a lot of data from PeopleSoft, and their convention is all caps on everything. And if we add any other fields and they're not all caps, I know right from looking at it that it's not a PeopleSoft field. It's another, like a calculated field or something else that we added to the table.
But I thought this was a table occurrence naming convention
Yeah,
question,
well,
not a
yeah.
field.
This is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a table occurrence naming question, not a field naming question. So the lightning round is really specifically for table occurrence names in a TOG. And because I've seen both of these methods, and I thought it would be kind of a quick question to which one you use. That's kind of the idea
I
behind
use the
this one.
capitalization on the right because when it's 2 in the morning and my eyes are blurry and I want to make sure I'm focusing on the table
Right
whose
table.
fields I'm looking for, it's easiest when that one is uppercase.
Okay.
3 underscores between tables.
3.
3 underscores between tables, and then 2 underscores to indicate that the following text is just the sort of nature of the connection, like ID or C for constant.
Mm-hmm,
And then because tables themselves can have a single underscore, so if I use 3, 2, and 1, I can parse the table occurrence string and do things with it, CodeGen.
I like your logic.
There's other naming conventions that I wish I'd done things differently, but that one I'm pretty happy with.
Mine evolved, but I think I'm stuck to the one I've just been using for a long time. I don't know if I could defend it. Yours makes more logical sense than mine. But in the world, I try to use a underscore as meaning only ever one thing, which means the existence of a relationship. So I try not to use it in table names or field names, so that it has
I
just
use
one meaning.
tildes in my relationships. So if
What was that?
I use tildes for the relationship stuff, but on the left-hand side, you might have multiple TO groups that are based on customer. So I would start everything with like a T10A, T10B, according to child, grandchild, T10C for great grandchild. And I might have a T11, which is also customer-based table occurrence. So if I just use customer as the front end, it doesn't work. And I want it to sort into the order, so I make sure that things sort so that the T10A is above the T11 and the A is above the B above the C. So I got my child grandchild relationship all defined in the name.
Yep. Logic. I mean, all that matters in naming conventions, which all of you guys are making a case for, is consistency and like a structure. So that was a lightning round one. All right.
Can I go back and ask a quick question about engage versus pause?
Yes.
I haven't seen that much about engage. Have you guys seen anything about engage out there, or am I missing something? I thought I'd see more details about it.
Be in Texas, Austin, I believe.
Yeah, how to sign up, but asking.
At a place without a hotel, which to me just ruins it.
Is it a hotel?
No, it's Apple's campus.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So it's like we're all going to have to conspire to stay at the same place because that's where all of the fun and interesting stuff happens.
They have a campground there, right? At the Apple campus.
Apple campground. That's funny.
Alexi, that does sound like a good plan to coordinate, kind of, try and get people in the same hotel.
Yeah, we should by we I mean you should do some research and find if there is one that would host a lot of us. Okay. So blast through the lightning round questions. Now we're on to the next one. All right. FileMaker Pro or Claris Pro? I'm curious. Now,
We
this
didn't
one's,
talk
I'm
about
gonna,
tab controls and slide controls.
well, that's a lightning round.
Oh, okay.
You're not supposed to talk.
Yeah. So like,
Well, except that I thought that one was the only one I voted meh on because like sometimes you need a tab control if you want
Right.
users to be able to do that. And then
Yeah.
if you don't, then you really want a slide control.
this is true. Also on this one, this is for desktop, not for iOS. Because obviously if you're doing iOS, you're going to use slide controls.
Well,
Oh, and I
the
should
only
actually
reason
say
I ever
tab
use a tab control
panel.
anymore is to use breadcrumbs because of the variable lengths that you can create. I never use it for UI perspectives except for visual feedback as to a breadcrumb of where they are. It's always slide controls now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the slide control plus button bar technique that other people have pioneered, which is hard to do the first time, easier to do the second time.
Yeah.
And Vince would know. Somebody wrote a really beautiful blog post on that. Mark, I think, was his first name.
Scott. Try and find it. I don't
At Beeswax?
footsteps. Yes.
At least the slide control buttons have scriptable controls. Tabs don't. It's a pain in the ass to run a script from a tab. But it's
They
nice,
have the trick-
it's nice this variable length. You can keep plugging the stuff in and make it as you're navigating through a hierarchy of stuff. You can build a breadcrumb trail using the tab control as a basis for it, as a visual.
Yeah, I'm processing a few things here. Like using a button bar and a slide control, you'd get the ability to have every single tab, if you will, be calculated, which is one of the benefits of tab panels because they're visual. You can actually have a calculation, like these are the number of line items in this thing or whatever.
I have I have a piece of code that runs in a number of government agencies, and there's probably 20 slide panels in there. Each one of them uses a different subset. So I just hide the buttons for the subset that this one isn't using.
Yep.
It's one common code for all of them, but all the stuff is there. They just don't see it.
Yep, that's a big benefit. Yeah. Yeah, the invisibility part of it and the ability to control it by go to object is a huge one for slide controls. That was kind of what I was trying to get to, that one. Okay, FileMaker Pro, Claris Pro. Does anyone actually have a Claris Pro database in production? Let's just start with it. You know what? That's going to be the only vote on this one because I'm kind of curious, but I'm also really wanting to discuss it.
Claris Pro in production.
Claris Pro in production. Does anyone actually have Claris Pro in production?
Somebody wave their hand.
I actually do. Not for clients though. It's my internal databases.
Yeah.
As far as I know, none of my clients are using Claris Pro in production. Anyone else? Vince, do any of your customers have Claris Pro in production or any other Platinum on the line?
Not that I know of.
Wow. Yeah, that was a grand slam home run for Claris to come out with that product. Because it's been a year or whatever, right? I mean, were there further comments there?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if they do that freemium, that's going to change things quite a bit because then you've got everybody's recipe book and who knows what suddenly come to life.
I'm going to vote on that one so that Claris Pro gets exactly 1 point because I have my internal database is in Claris Pro. And I really like when I log on, it just connects because the connection to my Claris ID is very persistent. And I really like that I have direct access to all of my data that's in Mongo, Claris Studio, right? Which is not a whole lot, but there's some because I was using forms for sign up for my training classes and stuff like that. But then Claris Studio, development seemed to really slow down. That's a whole different topic. That one I thought was going to have more discussion, but it doesn't seem like there's really much there. Oh, there's the blogs. Anyone else on that one? We're going to have to find other topics. I've only got 3 left. Oh, but do we end this? Do we end this in 10 minutes, or when is the end time?
Whenever we run out of things to say.
All right.
Or fall asleep in my case.
Or fall asleep, yeah, or yours or mine. Okay, so the next one is, and I'm really curious for some discussion on this one too, Boolean fields. I've seen them several different ways. So I have seen a global field that that just is a calculation that equals a number 1. I have seen a calculated field which is indexed, a calculated field which is non-indexed, both of which equal the number 1. So this is basically the field that you would have in a table when you want to be able to use it in a relationship, for example, to show everything that's existing. And then another one would be an auto-enter calculation, or even just a field that you set with a script. But in the 2 things that I'm really kind of looking at are which is better, like a stored calculated field or like an auto-enter or maybe other. So including auto-enter calculation or some other way. Discussion after my long-winded intro.
And Matt, this is for the left-hand side of a relationship for the most part?
I think kind of what I was getting at here is for the right side. Like if you wanted to use it to count records, for example, to use a sum function. In which case it would have to be stored, obviously. But really it could be for either
Why
side.
would you do that? Why don't you just count the key field of the?
Yeah, you could do that too, rather than using a sum function.
Unstored get found counts, isn't that the way to get a count of records? I mean, that's instantaneous and works all over the place.
Found count works, except not through a portal. So like if you wanted to count values.
It works with the portal as long as you're not filtering the portal. If you filter the portal through a relationship, found count still works.
Okay. I don't think
If you
I've
do it through a
actually
portal
used that
filter,
one.
it doesn't.
You know, I think I maybe was just kind of going after some discussion here on what our practices are for Boolean fields. There seems like I use them less than I used to. Because like Alexei pointed out, you can just count keys, right? You don't have to do a sum anymore. And if you're using a field like an is field, like the, is current, is, on hold or whatever, then they're Boolean fields, but they're not like the one field like that you'd have in some tables. And so those ones, the discussion of whether they're auto enter or whether they're calculation doesn't really matter because it's just a stored number field. So for the one that actually that has the 1 on for every single record, what would the methods that you guys use is what I'm curious about. Dinner is called, have to jump off. All right, Kurt.
I'm guessing global is better than auto enter, but I could be wrong about that. But I'll kick it off by saying the global might be the most lightweight, more
Yeah,
so
but
than the calc.
That's what I like to do too. I like to make it a global as opposed to, any kind of auto enter or a calc. Yeah, I like that.
And and if it's on the left, it can be global. If it's on the right, it could not be global.
Exactly.
Right.
And you could also have a global, which is a calculation and equals to number 1.
Oh, that's interesting. Does that work?
Yep.
A global is a calculation.
It's weird, but it's a thing.
You can do it.
An unstored calculation field, that's the number 1, has the same amount of weight as a global field, though, none. So if you're going to use it on the left, whether it's a global or an unstored calc, it's the same weight, I think.
That's a good point. And that would you'd pick up the reliability that that it's, you don't have to set it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to flip my vote. I like that one better now.
But that's also, I don't know, a little bit different. I don't know. This one didn't quite go the way I was thinking, but those are some interesting things. Anybody use any other methods at all for like Boolean hygiene?
The two other things that were mentioned, the is, Matt, the examples you were giving is this, is that, make the code, like if you're referencing in a script, make it read very, very readable. The other thing about, which I think falls into the category, is like a field like active. So on the right-hand side, you might have, let's say, 200 contacts, or no, you said we should have 10,000 contacts for your sample data. But of those, there might only be 9,000. So left-hand side is the one constant, and then how many of these are active? Like 10,000, of which 9,000 are active. So for that,
Right.
auto enter, there's the use for the auto enter. Auto enter active by default is one of the standard fields that we have. And then
Right.
you use the last function to count that maybe.
Yep.
Well, actually, speaking about this, there's a lot of cases where I just, for a value list, I just use the actual, what I would use for the label, like active, for instance. The value would be either active or null, and then that way I can just easily have a checkbox for that. And then I don't know, it just simplifies some of those things I have to do with layouts.
Okay. Yeah, Tony, I'm not sure on the. I guess I'm just such not a fan of auto enter because a record shouldn't be created unless it's being created through a script. Is kind of what I think. And if you're going to create it through a script, that puts all the complexity of everything that happens in one place. And so anything you do in the schema, you have to go researching another place for things to happen. And I don't like that.
I think there's a lot to be said for having everything going through a script and having everything being, super transactional and stuff like that. And I have a lot of respect for the people who have the luxury of doing it that way. I find myself working in a lot of systems that are not that locked down. Like I'd like to have, things that are set transactionally, like all over the place. It just seems I don't have things locked down. In a lot of the systems out here in the East Coast, they're a little bit Wild West.
Yeah, everywhere in the world they are. You're totally right about that. Like when the rubber hits the road, using an auto enter is really convenient. I'm curious if anyone, it's a sidebar, but does anyone actually still have use for the lookup feature on a field?
The legacy lookup, I think, is gone except for some obscure repeating field example, and was replaced with the two functions that showed up somewhere a long time ago. So they're very useful, lookup and lookup next, which are far superior because they give you access to the full calculation engine.
But yeah, so no one would use the regular lookup feature then.
No,
there's some repeating field, super duper obscure use case, but I think it's gone. Dead to me.
Okay. Dennis is saying yes.
I don't. I was just gonna say lookup versus. I don't see lookup versus auto enter.
Oh, this is not one of the ones. I just threw it in there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He's ad-libbing.
Yeah.
I thought it was related because it was like talking about an obscure thing.
Yeah. So just because I spend a lot of time in the DDR, and then this topic came up just recently for us internally. There's another kind of weird anomaly. If you have a lookup, and then some of us oftentimes reuse the same field, so we just duplicate the field and then use it for something else, and then say, oh well, I don't need that. I don't need a lookup on this field, so turn it off. And then somewhere down the road, you decide, oh, I don't need this field that was used for the lookup anymore. Let me just delete it. Now every duplicated field based on that lookup will show up as an error because it's cached in tools that process the DDR. And then the only way to remove it is to actually recreate a lookup of some kind, even though you don't need it, or to create a new field. But the problem is if you've referenced that field in hundreds of places, that's not an easy task. So another argument against lookup.
Just trying to help.
I know.
In case you changed your mind.
I secretly still use lookup to some limited case is where I literally turn it on and then turn it off. Like when I've had to retrofit a bunch of data that came from a bunch of Excel spreadsheets.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix this data and then I'm going to turn this off, immediately before I do anything like Vince just mentioned, because I ran into that in a legacy file and I was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a pristine DDR, which is like the holy grail. Like that's never going to happen, but
Could happen when you start from scratch. Dennis cannot unmute. All right. We're getting down there. I didn't put enough backup questions in. Okay, the next one, I think I had a little bit confusing description at first. This is basically master detail on a, so if you have a detail layout, do you put over on the side a portal that has all the records in the current found set for the current table? Or do you not, do you have a separate layout for like a list view or some other way to do that? So basically, do you use the master detail feature at all? Is kind of my question here. And what do you, and if you do, why?
You're being recorded.
It's all good.
I don't use it that much. I like list views where you put data in the footer or the header. It's kind of the inverse of a master detail.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think list view is kind of the classic way to do it. Which then, list view gives you all the other advantages, right? Like sorting.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot more UI controls, sub-summary capability, all the other things that you cannot do in a portal. But master detail gives you the convenience because on one screen you can see like, oh, here's your found set of records in this particular thing. These are the 8 companies you're working with right now. And you can just click, 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 and you don't have to do any coding or anything. You can just switch from one record to another very conveniently. And given that, looks like our votes are interestingly close.
Oh, they're
Like
about to adjust here.
Oh, and I haven't voted yet. I'm probably not supposed to, being the game show host and all.
Did you give yourself extra votes?
Well, there's not enough people in this thing.
Well, yeah, we had like 20 attendees and only 15 were voting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this was, I don't know, maybe the timing wasn't right for this one. Maybe we didn't really get it out to enough groups. I haven't had a meeting in my Portland group in quite a while. So maybe it just kind of fall off people's radar a bit.
Well, if it's an off time for them too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the Portland group, 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m. is a convenient time. I think those are really successful meetings when we had them then.
27 to 13.
Probably on the outie here, but I've had 4 phone calls while this has been going on, so I've missed a lot of the questions because it is prime time for here.
Yeah, totally.
I think maybe another alternative I use, it's kind of like a hybrid of list views. Sometimes I create another window that helps me control like other windows at the same time. So like if I update or select something on one window, it goes ahead and drives the other window.
Yeah, I like that. Like 2 windows side by side that like connect to each other.
Because we have like people with multiple windows and doing all kinds of who knows what things with their data, and yeah, I'm getting to the point where I save people's window settings for them so that they can because they go. It looks like I watch them. They go through a lot of work to set up all their web pages and FileMaker and all these other things side by side, and then they quit and come back the next day. They have to redo it. So I start saving their windows, and that would include these list views. These kind of like hybrid master detail views where they can go through and select something, and it goes ahead and drives another window. In fact, it can even drive WebDirect windows at the same time. So like, let's say they're looking up a
Interesting.
record and on a web page, well, if that's in a web viewer on a separate window, I can drive all those windows at the same time. So whenever they change whoever they're looking at, it goes through and changes everything that they're looking at in all their systems. So
Can anyone help Dennis out? He's been unable to unmute himself. He's commenting in the chat.
He just succeeded.
He
All right, he's back.
say something.
Dennis, you back?
He's raising his hand. Speak, Dennis.
I had an audio issue and I had to log out and log back in again because I wasn't hearing anything. So I wonder if Dennis tries that.
Said a minute ago, he said I had to log out and log back in to be able to hear the audio. So he can hear the audio. He can hear us. Hey, Dennis, we like you.
Yeah. I
Well,
want to hear from you.
there we go. Well, we'll just have to watch your chat.
Yeah.
He says thanks.
The last one that I had added to the list was Linux server versus Windows server for FileMaker server.
I'm going to vote what I want, not what I have.
Well, yeah. This will be a vote what you want, right? Based on, yeah. And so I don't know. I've seen some kind of conflicting stuff about performance, reliability, ease of updatability, ease of deployment. I think most of the hosting companies have pretty well switched over to Linux at this point. And largely because of the crazy costs of Windows Server on AWS, for example, and other places. But separate from that, like, what are the other strengths? What do you guys see as the strengths and weaknesses of each side?
Yeah, I'd like to hear the argument for Windows.
Well, kind of the classic ones I would say would be you have a desktop. You can remote desktop into a thing. You can use other applications on there if you want to that are pretty simple. Even things that wouldn't be necessarily recommended, like Google Drive or something like that for a backup strategy, or some other commercial backup system like name escapes me, Carbon Copy, whatever that one's called.
That's Mac, isn't it?
Carbon Black.
Crash Plan.
I can't remember. Crash Plan, yeah, one of the ones, for example, that is a commercial thing. Like if you really wanted to use something else that's easier to install and manage, like if you're familiar with Windows or desktop computer, then managing a Windows server is easier because you have that crutch.
Nobody
but then you
install
have
Carbon
to
Black
deal
on
with
their
Windows.
FileMaker. Sorry, Matt. Can nobody install Carbon Black on their FileMaker servers? No matter how you try, you cannot tell it not to scan the database folder, and it gets in the way of every single process.
So
it is very much a black box.
Yeah. So Carbon Black is straight up hard no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know.
And that's my opinion, not one of those of the people who run this meeting or any company involved.
That's actually like an observation of something really important. More than opinion, I think.
So while we're on this topic, what do people have to watch out for when they're switching over from Windows to Linux on the server? Anything?
Yeah, like are there
take obstacles?
Well, if people are voting, so I want to hear answers to that, Eric, but I also really want to hear is there actually decisive information that Linux is across the board faster in a way that's not academic?
Claris seemed to indicate that was the case. I don't know, and it just seems like they're more invested. I watched that. There was an under the hood webinar on Server, the latest version of Server.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like every third word out of every presenter's mouth was Linux. So if you just did like the word heat map, I was like, okay.
I did a podcast
Steve
with
can
Bill
comment
Heiser.
on that. I don't know.
Who?
I did a podcast episode with Bill Heiser recently about the Slant Cloud thing. And I think they have quite a number of customers. I didn't get an official thing, but I kind of read in that there's a number of customers that they have that they're using Windows Server for their FileMaker server. And maybe for some of the convenience reasons. And I think he was even indicating for certain performance things it's faster. And so I wasn't really sure. I should have peppered in more questions about that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'll tell you what.
The question? Sorry, is the question for a server as to how fast it is, or how long it stays up, stability? Because we've got Mac OS 10 servers running FileMaker server 19.3.2, and they're rock solid. You know, they're just keep on running along. So I know you haven't got Mac OS X as one of your two options there, but when you come to ask yourself which server do we need, is it the one that you don't have to support, or the one that is easier to support when things go wrong? And does your IT team have the ability to troubleshoot the Linux operating system more so than the Windows operating system or the Mac operating system?
Yep. I think when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about it as a cloud server, and there's really not a cloud server Mac server option. If you're running on-prem, then that's a pretty viable option. And I didn't know that it was that rock solid reliable. I have a couple of customers that use Mac servers and they have constant problems, but maybe they just don't run them that well.
Well, I mean, I've seen situations where when they use VMs, and they use a portion of the hardware for that particular instance, I've seen issues with that if it's not properly managed. And so,
there's a thread on community with some knowledgeable people on it. It seems like it's a pretty close race between Windows and Linux on the performance side. So Linux would probably, I'm guessing, use less memory and would have lower licensing cost. It might be easier to containerize or something like that, although I'm not sure about that.
Well, yeah, the RAM is vastly less RAM for sure, and the costs are vastly less too, because Microsoft started charging per core for their licenses for the data center versions of Windows Server. So it can become like well, not that you'd need it, but if you have like a 16 or 32 core server, I don't know. In my opinion, FileMaker server doesn't really use much processor, and it doesn't really use much RAM. The server that we're all sharing, I think, is 1 gig of RAM, which I know you probably think is crazy. But a well-designed FileMaker database uses only one resource, and that's disk speed. And so if you have a fast SSD, everything else is kind of academic, in my opinion. But for a really heavy application, then you definitely need to have a real server with real specs. And anyway, so, but yeah, on this question, I was really kind of just thinking, like cloud server, which is better? And it seems like it's pretty clear that. What's the score currently? 27-5, Linux to Windows.
Yeah, I think Linux is obviously going to be the future for servers, and that just means that you can have more and more people who have, better and better command line skills.
Right. Yeah. And where the desktop doesn't really matter because you can, get in there other ways.
And I'm assuming that all of the things that you can do with macOS, cron jobs that post databases up to S3 or whatever, I'm assuming all of those tools are in the Linux. You just have to have the command line abilities.
Yep.
Hey, I have a
Jack, I'm glad it was useful to you.
Hey, this is Mike. You got somebody tell me if you're hearing me. Oh,
We-
good.
Yeah.
Hey, so I have this one's interesting to me because Alexi knows she worked with my company several years ago, and other beeswax people have too. But so we do in-house development for custom apps for our company. And here's a weird one: our IT ops people, they want us FileMaker people to be more independent. They don't want to be supporting the servers that FileMaker runs on. They want us to run our own infrastructure. And some of us I would jump to, okay, well, that means fine, we'll outsource to the cloud. But others of us are like, no, 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 let's keep it in-house. And so I like really interested, like we're about to, as FileMaker developers, like have to become server admins. And I'm like, if I'm going to start now as a server admin, and like Alexi said, everybody says Linux, 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 Linux. So if Linux is the future, I want to be where the future is going to be. So if I got to learn something, I would rather learn Linux, and I would probably
Yeah.
need to be on Docker and containerize the thing.
Yeah.
And one other thing to throw out there for you guys, I'd love to hear if anybody has any thoughts on this that I'm triggering. But one other thing is, big piece of this is security, InfoSec. And I'm kind of tired of the IT ops people anyway. They need to get in there every other Tuesday and do whatever Microsoft update patching needs to be
And then
done.
reboot without the proper shutdown
Right.
method.
Right. So I'm thinking, I don't know why, other than Glarus seems to be pushing it. Linux is an advantage, but maybe it's for security reasons.
I guess the one thing that you triggered, the follow-up question that I would ask is why you'd want to be a server admin if your main job is to be a FileMaker developer. And I would say, hiring a trusted hosting company and let them choose if they're going to use Windows or Linux is where I would put my money, because then I can just focus on FileMaker and not have to, because there's no way you're going to catch up. Like if you're a server man, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to protect yourself from ransomware attacks if you're 80% FileMaker developer, 20% server administrator. You have a 0% chance of successfully, really properly securing your server, in my opinion.
Well, I was the cloud guy. I brought my company to the cloud when I ran IT, but I don't anymore, and I don't really get a whole lot of say in this. And I think the reason that people lean towards not outsourcing it to the cloud is cost. They somehow come to the conclusion that it's cheaper to not pay somebody to be your host. And, I think we can argue whether that's true or not, but yeah.
Well, hosting starts at $50-$60 a month. That's for sure. And if you've got a existing big server and all you have to do is spin up another instance or two Docker for Linux that costs nothing, then that's basically nothing.
Yeah, and our time is we're there, and I love the Vince's funny comment about in-house guys who have nothing better to do than just go around and make sure everything's themed. But the fact of the matter is, as far as the organization is concerned, our time's free. We're constantly trying to, explain where our time goes. But anyway, yeah. So you're right. There's no licensing for Linux. There's right, but you got a site license that you bought into with Problem Solver Circle for 750 users. What's hosting going to look like?
To keep it controversial, I'll say we've have customers hosting in, I think, almost every possible combination and permutation. And I would say there's no shame. We also have a lot of systems that have a lot of digital asset management structure, which has large files, which might incur large costs and might have bandwidth issues. And whilst we have put people up on AWS Windows, we have also done quite a bit of installations and maintenance of servers that are hosted on the local area network, often Macintosh computers. Maybe we're lucky that in New York City, you can get to a client with a spare computer pretty quickly, should the need arise. I do think that the economics for an AWS server can be improved. Matt would be happy to hear that we have at least one server with 4 gigs of RAM instead of the recommended 8.
Crazy.
No, no. Well, you're one, so I'm like not doing that. But
Yeah.
the
Try it.
spec for that version of FileMaker server was 8, but we're not doing any WebDirect or any heavy PSOS. So we're like, let's do 4 because that's all they need. And all they said was, hey, this is running faster than our in-house. They had gone to a distributed workforce. For customers where everybody's getting together in the office, I don't think you can beat the speed of LAN, although the internet is pretty quick. So anyway, just to keep it controversial, I think
Yeah.
there's no shame in having a server that is hosted on the local and having it even be a Macintosh computer. It's another option,
Yeah.
quite viable.
I mean, like probably the fastest possible situation would be a LAN hosted server with one of the super high end, like M2 whatever Max Pro, like the newest Mac, which would you might be able to get a faster Windows computer, but it'd be really hard to do. Like if
And SSDs all over the place.
right, but then you have there's every single one of those systems is a single point of failure, and granted everything is really reliable, but if the RAM goes, the processor goes, the power supply goes, any one of those things fails and the server's dead. And whereas if you use AWS, every single one of those things is redundant. And the only weakness in all of this mix anyway is really the FileMaker server software running, and more specifically, like a web publishing engine. That's what's going to fail.
And the occasional internet outage, which I know is quite rare, although AWS has had historically a number of service disruptions.
Yeah. Or I mean, like just what happened to me, right? I just lost internet from here. And if I had a server on-prem, none of my users would have been disconnected. Whereas if they had,
A good point. We had a live demonstration of the possibilities.
Yeah, and then my databases stopped and then reconnected. I really love that. That was a feature from a long time ago. I don't know. I'm not sure. A lot of these ones are like one of the things of this whole entire little exercise is all of these answers. The answer is it depends. There's times when having an on-prem Mac is the right way, and there's times when a cloud-hosted Linux server is the way.
Did Taylor Sharp just show up? He's muted. No audio. No audio, Taylor.
Taylor, you're muted.
He doesn't look like he is muted. Maybe he's having the same problem.
Hold on.
I said mic issues.
Yeah, there's a camera icon too, which is interesting. Or a little chat bubble. Dennis is throwing a barb in. All right, interesting discussion. I hope we can keep kind of doing these, but I think we might have to start redoing some topics that we've done a couple of years ago, maybe because the landscape has changed and like the arguments for and against a given thing has changed from what it used to be. How many topics do I have? There's 84 things we have done or on the list. There's only a handful of them that we actually have not done yet, maybe 20. And some of them don't make that much sense. Like, what?
This is Taylor. I finally got my mic
Oh, hey.
figured out.
Hey,
Oh, good. I'm glad you
welcome.
did.
Sorry about that.
One of the ones I had was whether one FileMaker certification was better or area-specific FileMaker certifications. And that one has been solved because now we have multiple, now they've actually done it.
No. We got an echo.
Yeah. I hear that. All right. Vince and I probably need to go back to sleep because it's 5 a.m. for me. Or have you been sleeping this whole time?
Thank you for putting on for emceeing.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you.
it's fun. I think, like I told you guys before, or at least Eric, when we talked, this is worth getting up in the middle of the night for.
Yeah, I knew you had a search solution you were thinking about sharing too, but maybe not this time.
Oh man, I totally forgot about it. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't really feel like doing a demo at this point.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. But the FM search results, the thing that I wrote a long time ago, has been completely redone. It's all JSON. It's much faster. It now supports server-side searching, which it never did before this version, and is free at claris.training, which is soon going to become some other name because Claris does not like me using the word in my website. So anyway, if you go to claris.training, you can go get, you can download it for free. And there's some YouTube videos on how to use it. It's really fun. I had a lot of joy throwing myself deeply into that for a couple of months to rewrite it from scratch and modernize it. Its one killer feature is it's the only way that you can get search results from multiple database tables shown on one screen in a FileMaker database.
What is it called?
Search results, or FM search results version 7.
You have a FM search results versus Logicator?
It's totally different than Logicator. So Logicator is kind of a way to do, like they come out, they're really completely solving a completely different problem. Logicator has all these really powerful things for or it's almost really more like a report generator thing. Search results is kind of more like Google. You get a single search bar, you type something into it, and you get results from all the tables that you want. And then you click on it and you go to that particular record. So it's as close as I could get to putting in Google in between a search bar and your data.
Interesting.
This version is much easier to configure, much easier to control, so the users can control it once it's in. Previous versions, you kind of had to modify a script with a lot of different things for the settings. So yeah, it's good and it's free. I don't know, my strong position on it would be that virtually every database would benefit from having this in there, and you can integrate it in half an hour.
Wow.
Because virtually all of your users in your databases would love to have a space on the dashboard and everywhere else where they can just type John Smith and they get records from the 3 places where the name might exist. All right, end of advertisement.
All right.
I had a conversation with the Logicator author a couple years ago. There's a flaw in that from the aspect that if you have a field from a child table on a layout and that's part of your search, you don't get the results you expect because it's based on the find of the child table fields and has nothing to do with the parent. So it's a fundamental error in the way the Logicator works in a given use case.
Who was that? Was that Kirk?
Kirk, that was Kirk.
Hey Kirk, can you email me that? Because I'm in touch with Mark and would like to pass that feedback to Mark about Logicator just because he's maintaining that. So would love for him to get that feedback from you.
Okay. Yeah, I started a conversation with Jay.
Oh yeah, okay.
And Jay got me in touch with the author and we talked about it for a bit. This is probably 2 years ago.
Oh wow, okay, so you've already got that, Mark. Thank you. All right.
That is Mark Scott, the man with 2 first names.
Yes, that's right.
You did a great job on
When we talked, he wasn't aware of it. I mean, he hadn't thought of it as from that context. So because it picks up fields from layouts, and if a field on the layout from the child table, then you've got the issue with what's being searched. And the only way to make that work is you got to denormalize the field to make it so that one record is back in the parent table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just going to take a moment to thank Matt again for presenting, and thank Steve again for facilitating, and everybody else who's attended. I'm going to sign off and wish you and all a great day.
Yeah, I'll sign off too. Thanks very much. It was always fun doing these things.